Recap in minutes. In today's video, we will be enjoying a drama war film, entitled Platoon. There will be spoilers ahead, chill out and enjoy. The movie begins in 1967 during the Vietnam War, when the Bravo Company platoon scouts the jungle near the Cambodian border. Among them is Chris Taylor, who is a recruit scouting alongside veterans. During the search, Taylor sees a corpse of a Vietnamese soldier in the forest. He freezes and is hesitant to move forward, thus, Staff Sergeant Barnes steps in from behind him, and orders him to keep going. Sometime later, Lieutenant Wolf ends the search and reports their status to the captain. Taylor lays down to rest and coughs roughly. Barnes looks at Taylor pathetically, and calls for Doc to check on him. Doc and Sergeant Elias assist him by removing his backpack, and telling him he is carrying too much junk. Sometime later, Barnes, Elias, Wolf, and Sergeant O'Neill discuss of ambushing the enemy later at night. Barnes tells Elias to prepare his squad for it, but he tells him it's O'Neill's squad's turn. O'Neill then explains that most of his squad will be on leave tomorrow. Thus, Elias has no choice, but Barnes orders O'Neill to come to the ambush as well. After that, the ambush squad prepares themselves for their mission. Another recruit, Gardner, talks with Taylor when Elias takes him with him, and Taylor is sent with Tex's squad. The soldiers move out to the jungle, as the rain pours until nightfall. During the night ambush patrol, Tex ends his shift for Taylor's turn. He teaches him how to activate the claymores, in case enemy soldiers approach their position. Tex falls asleep and leaves Taylor standing guard for hours. After his shift, it was Junior's turn, but he falls asleep instead of watching his post. A few hours later, Taylor wakes up and notices Junior sleeping on his shift. With only him awake, he is hesitant to use the claymores and doesn't know what to do. The other platoon attacks the Vietnamese soldiers, and the rest of Tex's troops are awakened by the explosions. A firefight starts, and Taylor fails to activate his claymore because the safety is off. The encounter resulted in Gardner's death, while Tex and Taylor received minor injuries. Junior then accuses Taylor of sleeping during his shift but denies it. After tending the wounded, Barnes gathers the platoon and warns them of the consequences of a firefight. Taylor receives a warning for falling asleep during his shift. A few days later, the injured Taylor returns to the camp. King and Crawford greet him, as the three work on latrine duty by O'Neill's orders. The three complain that the sergeants are taking advantage of the recruits, doing small tasks. After finishing their duty, King invites Taylor to their usual place, the underground. Below, Taylor meets several familiar soldiers, including Elias. He bonds with the circle of potheads, while remaining distant from Barnes and his followers. A few months later, on New Year's Day, the platoon goes on patrol. Taylor walks cautiously ahead while Barnes follows him behind. Barnes stops him as he sees something in the bushes. They discover an abandoned bunker, made by the Vietnamese troops. The platoon spreads out to investigate the area, and Elias enters the bunker. Wolf then orders Taylor and Washington to scout the area further. Inside, Elias finds an enemy escaping and shoots him on the spot. In a small camp, another two soldiers find a map of the area with marked locations. Seeing it will be useful to them, they pick it up. Unfortunately, it was a trap, and they got blown up. Elias hears the loud explosion and rushes back up. Because of the incident, Elias reports to Wolf that the area is filled with traps. They will need engineers to disable them. At the same time, Wolf is informed that the enemies were spotted in a village near the river. The platoon moves out, but realizes Washington is nowhere to be found. Thus, Elias stays with 4 men to wait for the engineers while looking for Washington. Soon after, the platoon finds Washington dead and tied to a tree near the river. Barnes is enraged by this, and enters the village where the enemies are said to be. A Vietnamese villager runs away from the village, and Barnes shoots him ruthlessly. The platoon enters the houses, discovers numerous weapons, and wreaks havoc around the village. Meanwhile, Taylor notices 2 villagers hiding in a house. He threatens them to come out, but Francis tells him to calm down. Bunny and O'Neill arrive at the scene. They watch Taylor confront the villagers by shooting the ground but eventually stop. Bunny calls him a coward and kills the villagers by bludgeoning them with his rifle. Eventually, Barnes finds the village chief and interrogates him. He asks about the weapons while Lerner translates them into Vietnamese. Lerner tells him that the chief has no choice because the Vietnamese soldiers killed one of them. Barnes doesn't buy his excuse, and the rest of his men start ganging up on the chief. The chief's wife tries to interfere, but Barnes mercilessly kills her too. He then threatens to kill the chief's daughter, if he doesn't cooperate regarding the enemy's whereabouts. After that, Elias arrives at the village and sees the severe damage done by Barnes, exposing his violent nature. He charges at him, and the two engage in a fight. Wolf intervenes to stop them, and tells them he got orders from the captain to burn the village and destroy the weapons. Elias then asks Wolf why he didn't stop Barnes, but he completely avoids his question. With the lieutenant's order, the soldiers burn everything in the village, destroy the weapons, and take the villagers with them. Later at the camp, Wolf and Elias talk to the captain, where Elias plans to file a report of illegal killing. The captain warns them there will be a court-martial if an incident of it is proven. Because of the tension between the two sergeants, the platoon is now divided. At night, Elias and Taylor stargaze, as they converse deeply regarding the previous incident. After that, they silently watch the night sky. The next day, the platoon is sent back to the bunker to investigate further into the area. A few moments later, the enemies ambushed them, and a chaotic firefight engulfed the area. Elias meets with Wolf and Barnes, and tells them his plan for his men to attack the enemy from the side. Barnes agrees but argues with Elias before he leaves. Meanwhile, Taylor attempts to save Lerner, wounded from the firefight, to bring him to dock. At the same time, Wolf requests an airstrike but calls in the wrong coordinates, injuring one of their soldiers and making Barnes furious. Elias then meets up with Taylor, and takes him along with Crawford and Ra. The group runs to the position where they can stop the enemies from advancing. Elias goes to the river alone, while he flanks the enemies from behind. Meanwhile, Barnes suggests to Wolf that everyone retreats with the platoon as he looks for Elias. At the same time, Taylor and the others confront the enemies advancing toward them. They successfully defeat the enemies, causing them to retreat. However, Crawford is shot in the lungs but manages to survive. Eventually, Barnes finds the three men and orders them to return to the platoon. Taylor tells him that Elias is still fighting somewhere, and Barnes assures him that he will find him. Elias fights the remaining enemies, while Barnes continues to look for him. After a few encounters, Elias manages to overpower them. As he is about to return to his platoon, he runs into Barnes. He is relieved to see him, but unfortunately, Barnes betrays him by shooting him. Meanwhile, Taylor grows anxious and returns to the jungle to look for Elias. He then encounters Barnes and informs him that Elias is dead. However, he finds him suspicious and goes back to the platoon. As the troops are evacuated by the helicopter, Taylor spots Elias on the field, wounded, running away from the enemies. They attempt to save Elias, but it's too late, for they can't do anything but watch him die. At the underground camp, Taylor tells everyone that Barnes killed Elias. Ra and the others are skeptical about his accusation and suggest they shouldn't fight Barnes. Everyone knows that he is stronger than all of them. Suddenly, Barnes comes in and overhears their conversation. He lectures them on what's necessary to run a military machine smoothly. He then dares everyone to kill him, but no one responds. As soon as Barnes is about to leave, Taylor attacks him from behind. Barnes overpowers him and pulls out a knife, ready to kill him. Ra interferes and convinces him that it's not worth killing a fellow soldier. Barnes hesitates but proceeds to cut Taylor's cheek and leaves the place. Shortly after, the platoon returns to the area where Elias was shot. They suspect an enemy division is nearby, and expecting the worst. The men prepare their foxholes, while Taylor and King talk about the difference between Elias and Barnes. O'Neill arrives and tells King to ride the helicopter, leaving the battlefield. Thus, King leaves Taylor behind. Later that night, the enemy troops slowly approach the platoon's perimeter. At Taylor's foxhole is Francis, watching for the enemies. Suddenly, Ra arrives and informs them of the alarming situation, that the enemies have surrounded the platoon. He also brings in the news of an upcoming airstrike later. A wounded soldier then approaches Taylor's foxhole, and tells them that the enemies are great in number. Francis suggests that Taylor retreats, but he insists on staying. Soon enough, they encounter the enemies. Taylor and Francis boldly fight them, shooting and activating the claymores. The firefight suddenly stops, and they hear a whistle from the enemy's side. Taylor quickly tells Francis to get out of the foxhole, and they manage to escape before the RPG reached them. Inevitably, the two get separated by the chaotic encounter. Meanwhile, Junior and Bunny are defending their foxholes. Bunny fires at the enemies, taunting them. However, Junior escapes from the battle when he sees their overwhelming number. Out of fear, he accidentally bumps into a tree, making him fall unconscious. With Bunny alone, he is outnumbered and is immediately killed. Unfortunately, Junior also meets the same fate. To save himself, O'Neill decides to hide under enemy corpses until the battle ends. Eventually, Wolf's platoon gets surrounded by the enemies, which kills him. Because of the fallen soldier's tragedy, Captain decides to send an airstrike at the battlefield to end it all. At the same time, Barnes ferociously kills the enemies in hand-to-hand combat. Taylor finds Barnes to tell him about the airstrike, but Barnes is too immersed in his bloodlust, even attempting to kill Taylor. Suddenly, the airstrike bombs the battlefield and knocks the two unconscious. The following morning, Taylor is injured as he wakes up and stumbles around the area. He finds an assault rifle from the enemy, and sees Barnes dragging himself away. Upon seeing Taylor holding a gun, he requests to die instead. Without hesitation, Taylor shoots Barnes and leaves him to die. Shortly after, the rescue team finds Taylor and brings him to the injured section. He sees Francis alive and tells him they're both going home. The two are carried by helicopter, and bids them goodbye. The movie ends with Taylor seeing countless bodies around the field. The young soldier cries as he realizes the horror and is forever haunted by the Vietnam War. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more videos like this, and help the channel grow.